Good morning everybody from a chilly northeastern corner of South Africa, the world's most beautiful country, or so voted by many South Africans and possibly a few others around the world. We're sitting here in the Kruger National Park, the western fringes thereof. The dawn has just broken and it is a chilly 13 degrees today. Unusually cold for this time of the year. I think a cold front has just come through. I think there's another one following it, and for us we say cold. I'm sitting here in shorts. The coldest temperature it ever gets here is about 4 degrees, and it goes up to about 40 during the summertime. Now that in Fahrenheit, if you happen to be living in the 18th century, sits at about 56 degrees today. So pretty chilly start to our day. I'm sure it'll warm up as we go along. You're on a live safari in case you've stumbled across this website and while trawling the internet, and we'd love to talk to you. Hashtag Safari Live or questions at WildEarth.tv if you want to talk to us or ask us any questions about anything at all, within reason, would be good to hear from you. My name is James Hendry. On camera today, making his sort of debut in the live safari business, is Tebs. Welcome, Tebs. Tebs is from Johannesburg, so this is a nice new world for him to be living in. On the other vehicle, we have the glorious Jamie, and she's being filmed by the equally glorious VM Dorenbrach, and they are in the deep south of the property at the moment, following up on some lions. Now, the lions were heard by a number of you, Kevin and Chris in particular, at 1:30, 2:30 and around about 4 o'clock this morning, and we think that perhaps those were the Birmingham boys coming in to reclaim their territory here at Djuma. There's been very little male lion activity here at all for the last little while, so that's what's going on here. Just south of us, the tracking team of Scott Dyson and Stefan Winterboer are out there trying to track or follow the tracks of a female leopard that seems to be coming up around here. They have heard the lions again recently while they're on foot, so I think the lions are probably around. We're going to follow up on the leopard, maybe help with the lions. It'll just depend on what we come around. For those of you who are new viewers, you are most welcome indeed, and anything can happen around here. We don't know around the next corner what's going to happen, so it's an exciting world of discovery for us every single morning. Right, on that note, I think we should carry on. You will see me possibly looking a bit stunned every so often like this. And that means that I'm being spoken to in my ear by the final control room, and on her directorial debut today, lots of debuts today, world premiere for Jerry. Jerry, good luck, and she's being ably assisted, of course, by Nicola and Tara. So, that's the team. You are most welcome. You are the most important part of the team, of course. And here we go. So, although it's a bit chilly, it is a crystalline morning. It's very kind of crisp and feels almost wintry. But obviously it isn't winter, we're in summer now. And every so often I'll stare over the side of the car, trying desperately to find sign of leopard or lion. Now, there's some very exciting news for you today. For those of you who are long-time fans, you will remember Tara Piri. She is going to take the Sunset Drive this afternoon, so throwback Wednesday, I suppose you might call it. And please welcome her with great openness when you see her this afternoon. I've actually not met her yet, so I'm quite excited about that. A long-time Wild Earth supporter and presenter, and she's been doing quite a lot of academic research, I believe, in the US. So it'll be great to have her back. I'm just going to get an update from Scott on those tracks. I'm going to stop here in this beautiful clearing, and I'll get an update on the tracks, and we'll decide from there which route we're going to take. We were going to go straight on to Arathusa, but I think we're going to stop here for a while and just figure out where those tracks are going. Not a great deal of animal life in the clearing here. Scott Dyson coming. Scott says he's waving at me directly to the east, but I'm staring straight into the sun. Okay, copy that. Do you think doing Zoe's is a good idea? You might even be able to pick him up there. Okay, copy that. Right, there you may be able to see Scott Dyson. He is walking through the bush to the north of us there, trying to follow the tracks. Now, what we're going to do is stay, I think, in this area. And just to give you an idea, the tracking of a leopard is possibly the ultimate tracking experience that you can have out here. Because they are so light, they don't leave much of a sign. So if a leopard comes across a road like this, well, then you'll see them because the road is soft and sandy. But if you then have to follow them into the bush, it becomes extremely difficult and extremely rewarding if you ever find them. So what I think we'll do is we'll stay around this area and we'll just see if she hasn't popped out onto the road somewhere else, and we might actually turn around and go back up that Impala Road and we'll see if we can find her. Probably Shadow or Karula, if we're not mistaken. Right, carry on. Turn around now. Thank you, Auntie Lynn, for your very kind comments to Tebs, and you hope that he's prepared for the amount of food that he's going to have to eat on my watch and the dancing and singing that he might be required to do. He's looking quite nervous about that sort of thing. But thank you, Auntie Lynn. We will do our best to encourage Tebs to partake of all the good food that we get out here. There is the great Stefan Winterboer as I speak. I'm going to stop here and just get an idea from him. There he is walking through the bush. You can see the lone figure of Stefan tracking. Well, it's always good to get your first mammal under your belt. The first mammal being Homo sapiens, walking through the bush as he once did many years ago, not with quite that modern equipment. Right. What a nice picture, seeing a person walking through the bush. We'll have a quick word with him. Good morning. How are you? Yeah, full of joy. Where have the tracks gone?
They came when you run. They came straight across the open area. That's how the termite farm.
Yeah.
So, but onto the open area, difficult.
Okay.
But heading to this drainage line, which is
All right. Okay, I will drive very gently up this road then, and just see if we can't see them coming across. Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you. So there you have it from the horse's mouth, as it were. Difficult, very difficult to follow tracks across the grassy clearing. There's also been quite a lot of hyena activity in this area. And sorry, I'm just checking something there. And while the tracks are not confusable, sometimes, well, they are. But on substrate like this, on this kind of sand, it should be okay. It should be pretty easy to spot the leopard tracks if she crosses this road. And the trick is you've got to keep looking underneath the branch, underneath the trees, on top of the trees, in the shade. Leopards do quite a lot of hiding, really. They're brilliant hiders. What I'm also going to do is try and get an update from Arathusa. We're right on our western boundary here. So we just need to get an update from them to find out if they've seen anything of particular import. Now, a question that I'm not sure that I can answer from Cucino John about death of buffalo. You say, was there a buffalo kill last night? Cucino John, I don't know. I certainly haven't heard anything about one, but perhaps there was a kill. Cucino John, where did you get your information from? I haven't heard of a buffalo kill so far. It's not impossible though. Those Birmingham boys do like to kill buffalo, and they're highly successful at it. So this dawn light always brings a sort of sense of expectation, especially if it's a cool dawn. The expectation is that the predators will still be moving a little bit. So it's always good to... There's always this kind of sense of excitement, and that dissipates slowly into the kind of peace of the mid-morning as the heat starts to build. I believe, Cucino John, that you did hear the lions on the dam camera and perhaps wondering about a buffalo kill. I don't think there has been one. You know, those lions have been roaring now most of the morning and heading down in a southerly direction, some of them. Also some calling from the north, which is quite interesting. So I don't think they've killed a buffalo, certainly not around here. We would have found them then. And I don't think they'd be roaring. If they were sitting on a kill, you know, they certainly wouldn't be moving and roaring if they were sitting on a kill. So I don't think they've killed anything. Very slow business, this tracking. That's okay. It's just lovely to be out here. So a very nice animal that we see tracks of, and sometimes we actually see, is a honey badger. Now, a honey badger is a sort of, it's called a mustelid. That's the family it belongs to. It's about that long. It's got a black body with this kind of white mantle along the top. And Lisa G in Arizona, you want to know if they ever raid our lodge. No, they don't. They're very shy of human beings, you know. They will raid places if they don't feel like they're going to be threatened by people, they will. But they're pretty shy of people, especially in the wild. And so they don't really come anywhere near the lodge. Where I used to live, we had, at a place called Ngala up in the Timbavati, there were times when honey badgers would come into the camp. But that was very seldom. You know, the camp was very open, so they didn't feel threatened. They could leave any time they wanted. So we didn't see. But here, I've never seen a honey badger anywhere near the camp. But we do see them in the bush. What you got to watch out for in camp is hyena. They will often come into camp. If you leave any of the rubbish out, they'll upturn the dustbin in the night, which is very unpleasant. Come outside and find a whole lot of your lodge detritus spread about the place, and the hyenas make a horrible mess. They don't have any consideration for not littering. Thank you, Lisa, for that. Very slow business. So what we'll do is we'll just do a loop around this whole block here and see while Scott and Stefan are on foot. Right, so Diane and Chris, you say that there was a lot of not only lion noise on the dam cam at 2 o'clock this morning, so perhaps they did go after a buffalo. That's very interesting. There's certainly Taxon and Aubrey are also looking for the lions with Jamie. And on that note, I think let's hand over to her and she'll tell you a bit more perhaps about what she's found so far in the way of lion tracks. And I will continue on the leopards and we'll see you in a little while.
Good morning, everybody, and whilst James continues his search, I'm trying to follow up on those sounds of the lions that many of you may have heard. Bumpy road. That many of you have heard on the Djuma Dam camera. So a big thank you to Chris and to Kevin and many others who sent through that they heard lions roaring. The difficulty with that is trying to judge direction. Now, Scott and Steph are out tracking, and they said that they heard the lions calling somewhere in this direction. So what I'm doing is just checking the southern boundary of Djuma first to see if we can figure out where they've come from. They're definitely on the move. Now, I don't know what's wrong with me this morning. I think I've got some kind of cold-induced deafness because I have not heard them once. I don't know why I'm going crazy. I'm usually quite good at hearing these things. Just haven't heard them. I was sitting at Djuma Waterhole when Scott called to say that he'd heard lions calling. He said he heard them from somewhere in this region. What I'm going to do is just drive to this corner and double check and then loop back around towards Twin Dams. Nothing coming through here. My suspicion, of course, which I'm sure is shared by many of the regular viewers, is that the calling is from the Birmingham Boys, that coalition of 5 young males. And they've been doing a lot of shouting recently to make sure everybody in the area knows that they're around and that they're in control of this particular side of things. As I said, it is absolutely freezing this morning. I haven't been this cold since August, probably. It's so chilly. But I think we might be seeing the tail end of the cold front because it's gone nice and still. That wind that was whipping about yesterday appears to have dropped. I really need to sneeze and it's stuck. Okay, sorry, back again. And once the sun comes up with this nice still wind, or this nice still weather, then we'll definitely be heating up. No tracks on this side. It's interesting because if it was the Birmingham Boys, they must have come from Arathusa at some point, somehow. They must have taken a path, and yet their tracks haven't come through on this side, so maybe it's not the Birmingham Boys, maybe I'm wrong. Unless they've done a big loop around to the south of us and crossed further up Gowrie Main, which is also a possibility. Either way, they most definitely did not come this way. Set of lion tracks coming to the south, but these are not that fresh. They've been driven over a couple of times. They might be from last night. I'm going to try and show them to you. Let me find a nice example. I think the best example might be that side. Can you see them? Cool. Perfect. I'm looking at, there you go, fairly fresh. It just looks like 2 sets of tracks. I think this is the Salala Pride from last night. These are tiny, some of these are quite tiny tracks. No, definitely not Birmingham Boy tracks, just judging by the size. What I might do so I can demonstrate what I mean is hop out and put my hand next to them so that you can get a little bit of a scale of size. Give me one moment. I have to to detach myself from the wiring. Are we on? Are we here? This one? Perfect. Thank you, ma'am. So this is a male lion track. I think that it's a young male. And if we look at it compared to my hand, the Birmingham boys, not much bigger, but just that little bit bigger. You'd probably do a circle around like that and just fill it out a little bit more. And there's a couple of sets of them here. There's one here, there's one line walking down here. But you can see all of the tires crisscrossing up and down. This is a main road, and it does get quite a bit of traffic, but it is first thing in the morning. There's a set here. It's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, it might be. I think it's the Salalas because this looks like a female to me. They're heading straight south down into Hoffman's. That could well be because the Birmingham boys have been out and about this morning. But we have lions calling somewhere in that direction, and I'm going to head back that way because these tracks are going to go south across our boundary and out of our area. But I still think that there's lions wandering around Djuma that I want to go and find. Those of you who might have missed the last few live drives, the Salala Pride, which is that pride that has moved up from Londolozi or moved north from Londolozi into our area and we've been seeing fairly regularly, they were pushed out by the Matimbas because they have 3 very young males with them who I think have been beaten up in the past by the Matimbas, which has caused the Salalas to go on the run. And over the last few days, they've been feeding off a buffalo kill around Arathusa. But I know that when Scott had them yesterday, they were drinking and then starting to move to the southeast away from Red Dam. And I think that's the tracks that we're seeing going down Triple M boundary. These lions that have been calling from here. I just want to call in on the Game Drive channel that there's tracks there. Our stations Konzo, Fringala, corner Gowrie Main, Triple M, mobile south. Looks like someone might have gone off into Hoffman's. James, I was just about to ask you what your route is. I'm going to double check around Treehouse Dam, see if there's any Ngalo evidence there. Otherwise, I was going to follow up down south on those tracks. Okay, copy, thanks, perfect. Yeah, I haven't seen any in Konzo coming across anywhere else on Gowrie Main or around Philemon's Cut Line, so it might have been them that was calling. Change of plan, I'm going to follow those tracks. Sorry, we're just discussing the best way of dividing labour. Because essentially... Lisa G, you were wondering why they might be calling, and if it is because they're calling in response to other lions being around, and it could well be. Male lions do call, it's part of their way it is part of the way of them establishing where they are in their territories. And once they are settled, then even the females will call as a way of establishing where they are. Good morning.
How are you?
Good, and you?
Moi man.
Yeah.
Couldn't in love driveway.
Oh, awesome.
Problem they cross into parallel.
Thank you, Roy.
And Shambin low Ngalang Konza there, but said already spotted Ngalang Konza on Zebra Drive, the Ita block going straight northwest.
Northwest.
Madoda Ngalang Konza Safari Street heading north.
Sure, where they all go.
Yes.
I see those tracks there at Gary at the corner there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same. It was night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. Because we heard them colouring now this morning.
Where?
It's somewhere, they said somewhere here.
I don't know.
But I haven't seen any tracks apart from those.
Yeah, because one Madoda maybe cross into
Maybe. It could be. Morning, Sean. Cool. All right.
check the
Thanks, yeah. I'm going to go across that way, quickly check, and then we'll see how we go. Cheers, man. Thank you. Bye, guys. Sorry about that, everybody. We just had to have quite a confusing discussion as to where everything's hanging around, because the lions, it appears, are all over the place. And that sort of brings me back to Lisa G's question. The Birmingham boys could be moving around and calling in response to other lions. They might also just be doing it because that is what male lions do. They're feeling territorial, they want to let everybody know. And if they did go quiet, they run a much greater risk of other males thinking that there's a vacuum and coming in and moving into their territory and possibly even getting a sneaky mating opportunity. So they call not only in response, reactively, but they call preemptively as well. And as I said, they also, once situations are a bit more settled, then it's not just the males who call, the females call as well, as a way of letting other prides know that they're around and where they are. And it's a great avoidance strategy so that you don't have encounters like the ones that happened between the Nkuhumas and Salala pride. Now the Salalas are in a state of serious disruption, possibly even more so than the Nkuhumas have been. Now they've been pushed out by the Matata because they're in that precarious situation of having those 3 young males with them. And I think that it is very stressful for them because they've been pushed out in this direction, but of course, sitting waiting are 5 young Birmingham boys who it appears as though they're sort of occasionally moving about on their own now. So not only do they have to contend with 5 boys moving around, but the possibility, just wanted to check along here, let's go Safari Driveway I think, the possibility of meeting 4 young males and then 1 big male. It's a very tricky situation for them. And they've just got to make sure that they stay on their toes and not get caught out. Interestingly enough, we've got an update from Shanae saying that there are 3 young males around Nkora Waterhole this morning, and we've got confirmation that those are the 3 young males, the Salala males. Now we can't be certain what happened last night, but we can guess that the presence of the Birmingham boys roaring throughout the night must have been a very intimidating aspect for those poor young lions. And I imagine that they turned tail and fled as far away as possible, or at least far enough that they started to feel safe again. I said that I think that these are their tracks that we're following. So at least that gives us a little bit of an answer, because there are definitely some very small footprints walking down, not very small, but female-sized footprints, walking south down this road. And what they must have done is heard the Birmingham boys, and then cut east away from the threat. It paced a bit. There's tracks coming up, there's tracks coming down. And that's probably a nervous response. This is supposition, it's building a story up, but it's one that's based on fact and based on what the tracks are telling us. Because a big male has definitely walked down this road now, and that's probably one of the Birmingham boys. Now the trick is just to find them and figure out where they've gone. Some here. They must be about to go east in that direction. And we were chatting to Roy earlier that you would have seen. He's the guide from Arethusa. Gone off in here. And Roy was telling me that there was... Now I'm going to continue my tracking experience on this side onto Arethusa, but my signal is being a bit shaky, so let's head across to James with his zebra, and I'll be back with you, fingers crossed, with the lions. See you a little bit later.
Well, it's not a leopard, but it is a zebra. And I think that they are extremely fascinating herbivores. Just before we get into some of the biology of them, the leopard is still in that block, we think, where we were looking. I've come quickly to the south because Jamie has been hearing lions all over the place. So I'm just going to give her a quick hand, not because she necessarily needs my help, but because she can't cover the entire area that she'd perhaps like to on her own. So we've come down to give her a bit of help, but in the meantime, let's enjoy a shot of these beautiful zebra, a very small group of them. Quite interestingly, I'm just going to sneak a little bit forward because there is also a wildebeest here, and I think as many of you will know, the relationship between the wildebeest is just over here. The relationship between wildebeest and zebra is an interesting one because they spend such a huge amount of time with each other in East Africa, those huge herds that move together. And I think in this particular case, here, they are spending quite a lot of time with each other for security reasons. So that's a lone bull wildebeest. He is totally alone in the world. He has nothing in the way of protection from a herd. And so he will spend time probably with impala and with zebra in order to have more eyes and ears looking around for potential predators. And they'll tolerate each other's presence quite happily. In East Africa, where they move in those big numbers, you'll find that they eat different lengths of grass. So the zebra go in and they eat slightly longer grass, and the wildebeest will then eat the slightly shorter stuff, and that kind of helps in those huge grassland areas. Just a lovely listening morning today. Lots of red-eyed doves calling, not red-eyed doves, ring-necked doves. Some Coqui francolins going tit, 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 tit. Red-crested korhaans. Emerald spotted wood doves. And it's always, always a good idea to stop and listen. Our ears are extremely underrated senses. Ooh. And thank you, Georgianne in Illinois. Apparently you have seen a honey badger raiding a camp and you've got photographs of it. And that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that update. I have found one of my most favorite beautiful things here. I'm going to see if Tebs can bring his camera to bear on it. Tebs, can you see this thing here? Isn't that beautiful? It's called a burnet, or certainly one of the one of those types of moths. It's a moth, if you can believe it. And the reason it's not flying away is because I think it's so cold that he will really struggle to fly until the sun has warmed his body up. Isn't that pretty? Look at the way his feelers are feeling around, trying to see if there's anything to eat on my hand. And maybe you can also see his proboscis. You can see that long bit coming out of the front of his head there. And that will be used to probe flowers, often on a zebra wood tree, for any kind of nectar that there might be. But look at that unbelievable iridescent green-blue color. Isn't that stunning? Now, I believe that Jamie found one of these the other day and quizzed you for the name, and I'm not sure what you came up with. I've known them as burnets before, but maybe they are something else. I think perhaps you... Oh good, it was a burnet. Thank goodness for that. It's always slightly embarrassing to be put to shame by your viewers. It does happen, so I've got used to it now, of course. Beautiful, beautiful thing. Right, I think let's put him back. Right, now we'll continue driving for a little while. I'm going to keep my little burnet friend. He can sit on my wrist there, because he's a bit cold. He can't fly off yet. And Chris Rogue, you have been watching for a long time, and you've obviously seen a wildebeest birth. I believe we have seen that live on WildEarth. And of course the birthing season for wildebeest and for impala is just around the corner. And you were saying you hope that we see something like that again. I do too. I've never actually seen the birth of an antelope before. Put that there. Now you sit over there, fellow. There you are. Such a special thing. Right, let's go. Just quickly, we're going to go and check on Treehouse Dam. Well, Sandra, I'm very pleased to have acquiesced to your birthday request and found you a zebra on your birthday, so happy birthday to you. And I'm glad that we managed to deliver on your birthday wish of a zebra. I'm hopefully going to be able to deliver on my just general morning wish of a leopard a little bit later, or a lion. They're happy with a lion. See, our little burnet is still riding along with us. Ooh, there's some elephants up ahead. Not some elephants, certainly at least one enormous elephant. A huge bull. Shaking his head at something. Going to stop here. There is a beautifully big elephant there. There he is. And he looks very irritated. That's a huge bull. Isn't he lovely? He looks very irritated, and I'll tell you why. He walked through here, shook his head, maybe when he heard us, and if you look between his eyes and his ears, you can see some moisture, and that's a streaming temporal gland, and is an indication of some kind of stress. I wonder if he isn't perhaps coming into must. Must, of course, for the elephant bulls is their time of mating. His testosterone levels will go through the roof, but he will also produce an enormous amount of liquid that smells Well, it's just a very elephantine smell, and it comes out of his penis, of course, called, yes, he is. Tebs, if you can get in on his back legs there, you can see that his back legs are very wet. So I think he's in must. He's dripping that green, it's called green penis syndrome, and he drips this sort of fairly evil smelling stuff. Litres and litres of it. So that's why he'll be streaming. He's probably just a little bit irritated. Now, it's very thick in there, so I'm going to go around the corner here and let's have a look at him there. In the meantime, our little Burnett is still riding with us. Thank you to Judy and Maggie. A fire grid Burnett, you say that it is. Thank you very much for that. The elephant is going down through this area here. Can't see him right now. But what we'll do is we'll pop out on the road. I'm sure he'll come out on the road here. Just go round. We'll see if he doesn't pop out there. Particularly irritated with life. He should be coming out at some stage around here. See if we can smell him as well. The smell of that stuff that they produce is so distinctive. It's not that foul smelling, but it is very just pungent. We'll just listen quickly, see if we can hear him moving. All I can hear is deathly silence now. No, there's a whole lot more. There's a herd behind us. I'm going to turn the car around. I think maybe he's been following the herd. There's a herd coming out onto the road behind us. Oh, hold on. Hold on tight, everyone. Let's watch this herd of elephants here. Well, herd, I'm seeing a youngster, so I'm assuming that there's going to be a herd with him. There are a whole lot coming across the road now. I'm not entirely sure what that extremely diminutive car is doing there. There we go. Have a look at them now. They're unfortunately crossing into the south of our reserve, so we won't be able to follow them, but we'll hopefully get a good view of them just in the south there. Heading past the rising sun. I do wish they weren't leaving Djuma. In here now, they've crossed the road. It was almost like they've crossed the road and now they can settle down and have a bit of a feed. So we can't follow them in there, but we can certainly have a look at them from here, and you'll see them melting off into the bush. It is amazing to me, continues to be amazing, how elephants are able to be so completely silent and just disappear. I can just hear them rumbling. Wonderful rumbling sound that they make when they communicate. So what I think is that bull who's in must is probably tailing this herd, and there might be a female coming into estrus, or perhaps in estrus already, and he'll be following the herd, trying to see if he can't get some sort of mating opportunity. And you've been watching, I know, obviously for the last little while, we've been watching the leopards mating, and how the female leopard is completely she induces the mating. She's the seductress. And in elephants, it's precisely the opposite, as it is with most mammals, where the male does a lot of the seducing and running around and trying to convince the females to mate with him. And that's certainly what the elephants do. Alright, let's go across to Jamie. She's in Arathusa, and we'll just get an update on her lions. I'm going to go and check Treehouse Dam and see if there isn't anything there. She thought maybe that there was some more lion activity over there, so we'll go and have a look there, and I will see you a little bit later.
Way across to Arathusa Dam. Now the tracks that we were following as we went along Triple M, it looked like the lines, some of them split off into Hoffmans. One big male walked all the way along Safari driveway towards the lodge. So I've come across here to check and see if we can spot any sign of him coming across for a drink. Now the Arathusa guides are following up on some lion tracks further to the northwest of us, but that lion cannot possibly, the lion that was calling, cannot possibly have made it across Arathusa in the space of time between calling. Well, maybe, but that's very far to have moved as fast as it did. I still want to double check really, really carefully, but I want to pop my nose down towards the dam and just see what we can see here in terms of bird life. There's not much happening though. No, not really. There's a couple of hippos that are very much submerged as mossy, weed-covered islands. Yeah. Off that side. There you go. You can just see the tips of some nostrils and some ears. Otherwise, very, very quiet here at the dam. I'm trying to decide which direction to go in now, because a lot of the lion tracks have been driven over. The Safari driveway is very much a main road in this area, so there's lots and lots of traffic, but I think he's come down in this direction. Let's go check and see if we can find him around the back of the dam. Keep your eyes peeled. It's interesting that the Birmingham boys have got to the point, and I think it is the Birmingham boys. I mean, there's of course the possibility that I'm wrong, but I don't think so. And it's interesting that they do seem to be splitting ever so slightly, and that doesn't mean they're splitting permanently. It just means that they feel comfortable enough in their reign over this particular area to go off into different areas. I think the older one, the eldest, Blondie, with the most mane attached to his head, he seems to be the one apparently who's moving quite a bit on his own. It'll be interesting to see once they do settle, and that's only going to happen in the next few months. But it will be interesting to see how they do settle down, and if they stay split or if they spend most of their time together. It is something that we suggested was going to happen. Little guinea fowl. Whoopsies. You always see them round here. This particular group lives around here, and you can hear some of them calling. That's a very comfortable guinea fowl call. It's not an alarm call or anything like that. It's just their standard morning announcement as to where they might be. I wish they'd tell us where the lions were, though. I know where the guinea fowl are. I want to know where the lions are. Now, in the past, whilst the Birmingham boys were pushing boundaries a little bit, they did head down across towards Londolozi, where the Matimba males are. And Lisa G, you said that you found it interesting that the Matimbas chased the Birmingham boys out of that particular area. And it is interesting. I think it's a combination of lots of factors. It is kind of the Matimba's last stand. But not only that, they've also established themselves a territory already. And maybe pushing for further boundaries at this stage isn't worth fighting for them, because male lion fights, as many of you will know, come with considerable risks. Where to check now? I think this way. Let's just check around this drainage line in case the line came off here. And territorial battles. Let's try that again. Territorial battles very often come with a very serious threat of death, and if not death, serious injury. It's something that I think maybe the Birmingham boys were trying to avoid. Oh, look at that beautiful starling in the sun. Look how he's shining. Cape glossy starling. Or possibly a blue-eared starling with that little curve. There's very little difference between the Cape glossy starling and the blue-eared starling. They're pretty similar size. They also have that yellow eye. You just get that ever so slight impression of a blue patch towards the back of around where the ear hole is. And I think in that case that was a blue-eared starling. But you must have seen the way it was shining like that in the morning sun. And of course our regular viewers will know, but for any new viewers, that's not any kind of blue pigment. They're actually blackbirds, and the way that the keratin and melanin pigments, the keratin is laid out in a way that it crisscrosses on each feather, and it creates that incredible iridescent shine by just the reflection and refraction of light. My word. Speech is not coming easily to me this morning. Reflection and refraction. There we go. Got there eventually. No tracks coming down this side. I was wrong, there are tracks coming this side, moving north. So he did come this direction. Let's head back that way. He has come down here, quite possibly to go and have a drink. The difficulty here is aging these tracks. They don't look... There we go, he's gone in there. He did go towards the dam. Fresh. Let's just do another loop around. I think he must have crossed somewhere. I must have missed his tracks. Maybe coming out through by the dam. Now, we've been chatting about birds whilst I track lions. We had that beautiful Cape glossy or blue-eared starling. The one thing we've been missing, we've got most of our migratory species back. But one thing that I completely agree with Jane, who's watching in Colorado, you cannot wait to hear the woodlands kingfisher and to see them. And I completely agree with you. We should be seeing them really, really soon. Now, I went back to visit the reserve I used to work on fairly recently, and the woodlands are usually back there before they get back to our side, where we are in the Sabi Sands, and they hadn't arrived yet. So maybe in the next week or so, we can start, but we never know. They could be here today. Keep your ears open. Naturally, there's always great excitement with the first arrival of the woodlands kingfisher. And for new viewers, it's an incredibly beautiful kingfisher. Very striking blue and black colors. And with a very distinctive trilling call. And just bear with me a moment, I want to really carefully check around this drainage line for this male lion. Definitely came through here. One more look. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys can give me a bit of an update. Have you seen a lion at all on the Arathusa Dam camera last night or early this morning? Because he should have popped out somewhere to the right of the camera. So it's the eastern side of the dam, southeastern side of the dam. And at the moment, the only thing I can see off in the corner is not a lion. It is an Inyala. Go check in here anyway. Lots and lots of lion tracks around here. Here's our Nyala moving away in the incredible green light. Oh, there, hello monkey. I think if this lion was still around, the monkeys would be shouting at him. So perhaps he is on his way to move further north to meet with his brothers. I'm just trying to listen to updates on the Game Drive channel. A little bit tricky to hear, but I'm going to head back towards the northern side of the reserve. Ooh. Starling's having a fight. As I said, it's one male lion, but I think he's making his way towards the rest of his buddies. And Mary Ann, you were wondering if the Birminghams do split. So if they split and stay that way for quite a while, would they then meet and would they reunite? And it depends on the context of the split. I would say yes. What might happen, because the Birmingham boys are a big coalition, and by big I mean in terms of numbers, they might establish a very large territory and then split up so that some of them patrol, say, the western boundary, some patrol the eastern boundary, and they stay pretty much split up, but reunite every now and again if the coalition's territory is ever faced with some kind of serious threat. Now, it's unlikely that they would fight in that kind of context if they were moving around, sometimes bumping into each other, but really keeping separate. But if we have a situation like what happened with the Matimba males, the Matimba males split up completely. The Matimba coalition was originally a coalition of, I think, 6, and it split into 2 and 2. 2 stayed north, 2 came down south, and those are the Matimbas that we know fairly well. And then 1 went into the Kruger. And And at that point, they were separated for so long, for many years. They didn't reunite in that time. And they patrolled completely distinct territories that were separated by another coalition of males. And I know there were lots of questions asked about whether the Matimbas would ever reunite again, particularly when faced with the threat of the Birmingham Boys. And the general consensus was that no, they wouldn't. It's highly unlikely. They probably would have fought each other in that particular circumstance. When separated by another coalition in completely distinctive, not adjacent territories, so not part of one big territory, and separated for years and mating with completely different female prides. To make my way a little bit closer to some of the other guides to see if I can get their update, because these tracks have disappeared somewhere around that dam, but he's definitely not there. And in the meantime, let's head across to James, who has some elephants to show you, and I will be back with you a little bit later.
Well, pretty much as when I last saw you and then came back to you, not quite what we were looking for, but wonderful to have more elephants here on Djuma, so they don't seem to be about to cross a border, which is excellent news. A herd moving through some pretty thick bush here, but what we'll do is just wait to assess where they all are, and then we'll drive slowly in and see if we can't get a better look. It's a totally different herd. We haven't come too far from where we were before. And that we didn't see that bull again, that musk bull. Now, just to give you an idea of where we are in relation to Jamie, if you're looking at that elephant, we came to Treehouse Dam to check if there were some tracks here, because she thought there may have been a split in the coalition, and she is now, Treehouse Dam is off to the right hand side of your picture, and Jamie is to the left-hand side of your picture by about, well, at this stage, probably 4 kilometers or so. So those lions have moved a huge distance in a pretty short period. Okay, let's move slightly closer to them here. Like that, I say, they are in thick bush, so we don't want to make too much noise around them. They're not, don't like a great deal of thrashing about in the bush. Very difficult to sneak around. Now, we've had a long we didn't have a long discussion, we had a short discussion about the fact that the wildebeest and impala birthing seasons are coming up. And Jennifer, you want to know if I've ever seen an elephant being born. Jennifer, I haven't. I know people who have, of course. And I've seen very newborn elephants, but unfortunately I've never actually seen one being born. And I think it must be one of the most amazing things in the world to see, because the elephants apparently go into a state of, not just the mother, but the whole herd starts to celebrate, and they make a huge noise. Right here. Just very relaxed with us for now, which is excellent. And the whole herd, Jennifer, goes into a state of huge excitement, and they make a noise around the female that's giving birth, and they all look after the little baby when it's born. And it's a really kind of celebratory affair in the herd, which I think is so exciting. It doesn't happen in any other animal that I know of, except the human being. And as I've said, well, I kind of bang on about it quite a lot, I think, but the more I study elephants out here, the more I watch them, the more similarities I find with human behavior. And certainly human beings who love animals try to find connections with them through the emotions that they through the emotions that we either think we can see or we know we can see. And with elephants, that just seems to be so much easier than with many other animals. And one of the big things, of course, is the gaining of trust. That with animals is a key. If you ever want to really discover how they behave in the natural environment, gaining trust is extremely important. And that's what we do, especially with elephants. It's a process of deep respect. And so you always watch their behavior and make sure that you never push them hard and make them upset with making a noise. You try not to. All right, I'm going to go a little bit further forward. There's another elephant behind them. It is very thick in here, like I say. I'm going to just drive very slowly through here. Sorry, little chap. Stop here. There we go. He's just trying to eat and he's a little bit nervous by the noise that we're making. There he is, you can see him through there. Not the best picture, of course. I haven't parked in the best area. Tebs, I think what we'll do is let's try and go around that little termite mound there and see if we can. Well, no, here he comes. Let's do that. We'll go a little bit round here, see if we can't get a better view. There's a great wall of trees all around us. Now, as you can see, getting through here is not going to be possible. Let's sneak a little bit forward. Tibbs, have you got a picture of that one there? Or have you just got bush? Let's just sit here for a few minutes and see what they do. See if they don't come out. There we go.
James there. When do you think the real rain will be coming? If this is a rainy season, but it James there.
Sorry everybody, you can probably hear the final control talking, and that's because I have another radio that I left on. Okay, so James Bear, you've heard your own question being asked to yourself. That's my fault, sorry about that. James, you want to know when I think that the main rains are going to come. Pretty standard weather we've had this year so far. A couple of early sprinkles in spring, a bit more rain in the last week or so. The main rain, James, normally doesn't start until the second half of November, and we often think as soon as the trees start flushing, we tend to think of the we tend to think of the summer being about to start, which it does, and that normally in many parts of the world brings rain. So up in Johannesburg, you'll have the first big thunderstorms sort of around September, October, and they get quite a lot of frontal rain there. But you come out here, and the main rain, it stays very dry quite often until the end of November. And that's pretty much, I think, when we'll get rain. That's in a normal year. Now, I mean, a normal year out here in the Lowveld, in fact, in many parts of Africa, is very difficult to discern. There's often the concept of an average rainfall is ridiculous because it goes up and down so much. And so you can't really say. But I would say in this area, certainly in my experience out here, end of November, well, halfway through November is when we start to get the proper rains, and that comes in big storms from the northwest and sometimes from the east, but normally northwest. It will come in over the mountains, swirl through here, and then it just, it's the most wonderful experience to have a proper big African thunderstorm out here. But the stuff that we've had so far, the little nice soaking rain, has been kind of frontal from the southeast. These elephants are not being particularly confiding. Klebs, maybe we can get one more look at them there. Then I will try and move the car, but I don't think we're going to get in any closer. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing but bush in your way there. We'll move that bush. There you can see the elephants. And thank you, Jeffrey, in Austin, Texas. Apparently I don't need to do a rain dance to inspire rain. Apparently we just need to drive around playing Toto's song Africa. I don't think we're going to take that advice, Jeffrey, but thank you. If we get really desperate by the end of November, perhaps we can rig up some speakers and drive around playing the song. I didn't know it was a favourite of the rain gods out here, but perhaps it is. Now, a basic elephant social structure would consist of a matriarch, some related females, be they cousins or aunts or sisters, and the calves and their offspring. And generally the big bulls are not in the herds. In fact, they're always not, unless they're trying to mate, like that other one we saw earlier this morning. And Melissa, you say that there is a term called allo mother, which refers basically to the carers, if you like, of elephants that are not with their mothers. So a mother that, or a cousin or aunt that would look after a youngster when its mother wasn't around. And you say you've never heard the presenters use that term before. Certainly in my case, I can't speak for the others. Melissa, I've never heard that term before, so that's really interesting. Allo mothering. I don't know that it happens a huge amount in an elephant herd when the actual mother isn't around. So once the calf weans, they will spend time with different females in the herd, and often with the younger bulls and just maybe youngest cousins and siblings, they do spend time with them. If a mother does die, normally the calf will be adopted by another female, and especially if she's able to suckle, she will adopt that one. But I've never heard the term allo mothering before. That's quite interesting. Thank you, Melissa. And Barbara in Texas, good morning to you. I didn't move a gardenia bush. That bush there that you can see is a red bush willow, a Combretum apiculatum. There's no gardenia in here that I can see. There will be some probably closer to the drainage line or the stream that runs down the middle of the slope. Right, these elephants are being particularly irritating because they won't come out of the thick bush, and I can't get in there any closer. So we'll reverse back. I think we can still get a view of the youngster that we saw initially. And we'll go and have a look there quickly, and then we'll pull out and see what else we can find. Now, often people would like to identify individual animals by different markings, and Lyle Washington, you say that the best way to do that with leopards is by their spot patterns. I agree completely. He's correct. they all obviously have totally unique spot patterns. And how do we tell different elephants, you say? Well, Lyle, I think, let's say, it's a nice tire bursting piece of wood. Right, the elephants are disappearing off here, so I don't think we're going to be able to follow them, I'm afraid. It gets so thick in there. So we'll go around and see if we can't find some others. There were lots of tracks around. But Lyle, you want to know how you find who the different elephants are, how you identify different ones? Lyle, the way you do it is pretty intuitive, really. It's by their different features. They may have a broken tusk, they may have a cracked tusk. Their tusks are all different lengths, so that's often a very good way of doing it. Of course, elephants grow continuously throughout their lives, and so you can get confused. They also break their tusks every so often, and they'll wear them down. Their tusk shapes will change. So, I mean, to watch a single elephant from birth to sort of death, well, you'd have to be a 60-year-old researcher to do that. But it's not easy. They get little nooks in their ears, but of course those can also change. So it's a lot more difficult following an individual elephant than it is to say a leopard. But it would be the tusks, it would be the sort of tears in the ears, maybe the odd marking on the trunk, that sort of thing. But not easy. Right, very thick bush in there. Let us continue around the corner and see what else we can see. And the weather has not warmed up much. It's still pretty chilly. I don't think it's more than 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. 16 is, if I'm not mistaken, 61 degrees Fahrenheit. So for this time of the year, pretty chillsome. And there's a breeze blowing, a wind coming in from the southeast. And I know that they've had snow, if you can believe it, in November. Snow in November in this country is particularly ridiculous. On the Drakensberg Mountains of Natal and I think the Free State. So and that was in the last few days. That's completely ridiculous. And we had a question about climate change the other day, and is it happening? And I said, well, I wouldn't like to say that because, you know, I think that sometimes it's so subtle. But certainly there's some very odd weather things going on. And one of our viewers sent me a message the other day to say that there seems to be some fairly odd weather patterning going on all around the world at the moment. So who knows? Could well be something climate changey about the whole thing. Certainly to be sitting in a Jersey on the 3rd of November at 7:30 in the morning is unheard of. Now, you will have noticed, of course, that most of the water holes are dry. Even Buffelshoek Dam, which is our last remaining sort of large water hole, is drying up. And apparently it hasn't dried up before. I was chatting to Graham, who is our basically the brains trust behind what we do here. And he said he's been around Djuma for 17 years and he's never seen Buffelshoek Dam dry. So it's getting pretty dry. If we don't get rain in the next 3 weeks or so, I suspect it will dry out. And GJ in Southern California, you've been obviously watching the Djuma Dam cam, and you're saying what's its lowest point. I'm not really sure what you mean by that, but you also say that it looks like a pile of fish bones, I think, and rocks. It gets very low, at least, I mean, it's at its lowest point now, so it means completely dry, there's nothing in it. And it will hopefully fill up probably after about 30 millimeters of rain or so, but it'll have to be a pretty big storm for there to be any water there. and then it will dry again very quickly unless the water table is brought up by some substantial rains. And often what you see is that the effects of a year of low rainfall are only felt the season afterwards. So that's what we're feeling now. The water table is low because of a very poor rainy season last year, and what that's meant is that the water table has slowly been denuded, and so these dams are not holding water like they would have. The grasses are definitely much more sparse than they would be after a year of good rain, and the trees will have used up quite a lot of their reserves to survive that bad rainy season. So if you have another bad rainy season, the effects will be that much worse. So most of the things out here in the water table can survive one season of bad rain, but if they have another season of really bad rain like that, then you'll really start to see the effects of dryness. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We use the term poor rainfall or bad year of rain to describe drought. Drought is an inevitable part of the African ecology out here, and it's a very important part of it. Without it, the variation that we see around us wouldn't exist. And droughts change the shape of the vegetation probably even more than the animals do. They'll kill off some of the trees. A drought will. It might make some areas thicker with trees. And so it really is important that we have these times of drought and times of wet, because that's how these African landscapes have evolved over the years. There are some impala. One of them is a unicorn. Now, I bet you didn't think you were going to see a unicorn with us today. Well, lo and behold, there is a unicorn. I'll just stop here. He's really nicely lit there in the sun. And he has one horn because he's lost it having a fight, probably over a lady. Now let that be a lesson to any man watching today. You might lose your horns as a result of fighting over ladies. And that horn will not grow back. So he will look like that for the rest of his days. He's having a bit of a scratch, and impala do rub their horns against trees to show a bit of territoriality, but this time of the year that's not really the case. I think it's probably just having a scratch. Of course, he will be hugely disadvantaged in a fight over a lady, and the question as to whether he will fight again arises. I think he absolutely will. Impala fight over women, well, not women, ewes, because their testosterone levels eventually get the better of them when the ewes come into estrus. So the testosterone levels of the males go up, and they're then unable not to fight with each other. He will be far less successful with only one horn. He may even be killed during a conflict. But I don't think it'll affect his willingness to have a fight. But it's quite interesting, and I mean, we were chatting about this last night around the fire. We've obviously we are doing quite a lot of research into different kind of aerial photography and aerial filming, through the use of drones. We have a drone commander, Andrew, flying our drone over the Nat Geo Wild shows that we did, and we'll be reinstituting that fairly soon. And we were just chatting about the different interesting things that you would see in a herd of animals from above it, especially if they were not aware of being viewed. And I think especially like with a herd of elephants like we were watching there, we're seeing a very kind of, we've got a view of them from the side, and we think we get an idea of what they're doing. But I think if you were to watch them from above, then it would make a huge difference. Now, that single-horned impala, just to try and link the two stories together, I think you will find maybe it will fight less, but what impala do is quite interesting. Although when we're looking at them it looks like only the big male manages to get a harem of females, there is a syndrome, a phenomenon in impala, and I think it happens in many other antelope. And it has a really nasty name, which I'm not going to repeat, and apparently it's an official biological term. But what essentially it is that there were rams that will hang around, knowing that they're not quite up to taking a harem, but as the females come into estrus, they will leap into the harem quickly when the dominant ram has his back turned, and they will mate quickly and then leap away again before they've been noticed. And impala mating is a very quick affair. It's not quite like the rhino, which take 40 minutes over it. And sometimes the male falls asleep while on the job, as it were. And they're certainly not like the leopards, which have repeated matings over 5 days. It's a very quick affair. Probably takes less than 2 seconds. And so off a ram like that with his only one horn might turn into one of those chaps who hangs around on the side of a harem and sneaks in every so often for a cheeky mating before he leaves again. Alrighty. Carry on going now. We're going to get back towards where those leopard tracks were. There are no lion tracks around here. I think Jamie is on all the lion tracks that there are. She's certainly been the cat lady of Djuma for the last little while. And I mean that, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense at all. Anna Marie, you make the comment that it must be astonishing to watch an elephant mating. It is astonishing to watch. I've seen it once. And it is amazing, and the most amazing thing about it especially is, the cows can start to breed from about 9 years, and they're not big at 9 years old. And a big bull is probably 4 times the size of a 9-year-old female, at least. And to watch the process that they have to undergo in order to mate, it's quite something. A bigger cow, obviously not so much, but you really do notice the difference in size. And a big bull is bigger than a big cow by about a third. So he's 33% larger than she is. It's an amazing kind of mechanism and how it works. She has to be receptive. She can easily get away from him if she wants to, because she's almost got to reverse into him for the mating to be possible. All of their equipment is so far underneath the belly that for her to receive the male, she's really got to be she's got to be terribly receptive, and she's got to be willing. If she's not willing, she can just walk forward, and he will be completely unable to mate with her. That also tends to be a very celebratory affair. I drove along here earlier just before you came to see us, when we had the elephants. You were still with Jamie, and I saw that impala with his one horn, and I thought that perhaps I've seen him before, not too far from here, just around the corner on another road. And Sandra and Mish, you also reckon you've seen him before? Yeah, I think that it's the same chap, and he's hanging around this area in his little group of bachelors. And our birthday girl, you say, probably a very lucky thing to see a unicorn on your birthday. Yes, I think it probably is. Probably any time, really. I'll just give you a quick look over the mountains when we get down here. While Jamie's tracking the lions and we're hopefully going to find some leopards, Jane in Colorado, a lovely question about the culture of this, or the cultural heritage of this area, and you want to know a little bit about the Shangaan people and where they come from, and you say you've befriended many Shangaan people in Zimbabwe. That's very interesting because there are not a lot of Shangaan people in Zimbabwe, only as far as I know in the deep south. And so I imagine that you've done some pretty nice trips if you've been down there and you've met the Shangaans there. I'm just going to stop around the corner here and you can have a quick look at the crispness with which the mountains have been outlined by this little cold front that's coming through here. And there we go. Well, I'll stop over here. You can have a look. Some more impalas, and beyond them, the mountains. And even some lilac-breasted rollers, so there's a whole lot to look at here. Jane, the Shangaan people come from, originally, it's quite a complicated history, but in broad strokes, the man who gave his name to the Shangaans, whose name was Soshangane, wasn't always called that. His name was Manu Khosi, and he was the leader or chief of an offshoot of the Zulu people called the Ndwandwe. And now the Zulus, of course, are tremendously famous. And Manu Khosi fell out with Shaka, the Zulu emperor, in round about 1820, somewhere around there. And he was sent scuttling north with his followers. Jeepers, look at that bird flying. Debs, can we just have a look at these two lilac-breasted rollers here? Keep an eye on them. They keep taking off and flying into this wind. It is astonishing, and they're shouting at each other. That to them is some kind of a very attractive mating call that they're making, and clearly it is there we go, flying up and around the place. There's three of them actually. Anyway, so Jane, so what happened is that Manu Khosi took his followers and they went up, and basically they went up into the coastal plains of Mozambique, where they came across the Tsonga people, and the Tsongas were a sort of fairly widely spread group of people, and they weren't in any way a nation, so didn't have a centralized authority at all. There you can see these rollers going crazy. And so Manu Khosi basically just absorbed them and used his experience of Zulu military tactics to forge a nation, if you like, or an enormous tribe. And he took the name Soshangane. I'm not sure where that comes from. Nobody really knows where that name comes from. And he gave the name Shangane people to his followers. And then they spread into South Africa. They came east into South Africa and they went north into Zimbabwe. And at the moment, the Shangaan people are spread down the western boundaries of the Kruger National Park, the eastern boundaries of the Kruger National Park in Mozambique, and then into the south of Zimbabwe, where you've obviously met a few Shangaan people. And it is... people use the term Tsonga and Shangaan interchangeably. And I think Tsonga is kind of the overarching group, and Shangaan would be a slightly smaller group of people that speak a similar language. And it's interesting to me, I always found it fascinating that the language they spoke was not the language of the conqueror. And apparently what happens is, Manu Khosi came north with his warriors, largely with an army, after he was pretty much put to flight by Shaka, and so it would have been a largely male invasion, I think. And the Tsongas, of course, would have been lots of women and children there, and their warriors would have been put to flight probably. And I think it's interesting that what happened there was that the language adopted was not Zulu, which was the language of the king, of Manu Khosi and Soshangane. The language adopted was that of the women who came into the tribe, and apparently that's quite a common thing. Children and tribes learn the languages of their mothers and not their fathers. So that's the basic story, Jane. Amazing stuff with these lilac-breasted rollers. So Billy Joe, you obviously just back to the unicorn that we saw earlier, and you say, isn't it amazing how the wound seems to have healed completely, and how does that happen? Billy Joe, it's a piece of skin that's grown over the spot where the horn broke. I think the horn broke very close to the skull, probably broke off almost entirely at the base. Sometimes they break off halfway, but that seems to have broken off entirely at the base of the skull, and then the skin would have just grown over. And I think, the ability of animals to heal out here is quite astonishing. It really is quite amazing how they are able to heal, the animals. These rollers are going crazy all over the place. Almost impossible to follow them with a camera, but they are flying all over the place. So, let's turn around and we'll head back towards we're going to head back towards where those leopards were, and there was a question from Jen Coyle about poisonous somethings, and I'm afraid I missed whether it was animals or plants, but we'll get that back from Jerry, and then I will tell you. Now, we're often asked about things that are perhaps toxic to us and toxic to animals out here. Jen, there's not a huge number of poisonous plants out here, and in terms of being poisonous to animals, I think there are almost none. But there are very mild toxins here that many plants have to keep them safe from being eaten by various herbivores. So a lot of the plants produce a tannin, which isn't necessarily poisonous, but if you eat too much of it, it'll stop up the gut and it can cause death. So not necessarily poisonous, but some mild toxins that will put animals off eating them. Definitely, and aromatic substances that taste terrible, and again, if ingested too much, might cause trouble in the stomach. But nothing that I know of out here that would cause immediate death. There are one or two, something like a milkweed, for example, which has got cardioglycosides in it, which is I think you get milkweed all over the world. Fairly unattractive things with the bulbous, spiky little balls or pods, and they produce a milky latex that's pretty toxic, and so we wouldn't eat them. Some animals do eat them, they're able to eat them. And then you get things like the tambuti tree out here, which is very toxic to us. We wouldn't be eating it, and we certainly, I put some wood on the fire last night and it smelled like tambuti, and then we moved away from it quickly because the smoke even can be quite toxic, but many animals can eat it. I've seen kudu eat it, black rhino really enjoy it, porcupines eat the bark. So, the animals out here have adapted pretty well to different things to eat. There's very little out here that an animal will. Let's look at the eagle. Just move very slowly, otherwise it will fly away. There's a tawny eagle. Oh wow. It's not a tawny eagle, sorry, it's a steppe buzzard. Look at that. Well done. That's amazing. I'm just trying to make sure that I do identify it correctly for you. I think it was a tawny, I don't think it was a steppe buzzard. Anyway, it's sitting right there, and I suspect what it was doing is picking up termites. Quite possibly picking up termites out of the wood there. And just on the ground there. Beautiful, beautiful bird. Genevieve in New York. You are obviously feeling a little Christmassy at the moment, and of course during the Yuletide the best way to get a kiss from a lady, of course, is to stand under the mistletoe. And you'd like to see a big clump of mistletoe. We do get mistletoe out here. I will show you some. They like to grow in marula trees, so we'll find some, and yes, I've obviously failed to make mistletoe work for me. Perhaps you've been more lucky. Mistletoe is a parasite, in case you're wondering. They grow up, get right into the kind of vascular system of the plant that they grow on, and they create these huge bulbous. They create a gall first of all on the marula tree, and then they grow from that. I'm sure we'll be able to find one around here. Of course, now that you've asked to see one, we probably won't find one. They're definitely around. Lots of them. Now, Georgianne in Illinois, and this is, I mean, of course, continues to astonish me how much our viewers know. And Georgianne, you've been watching for a while, and you say you've seen lantana on the reserve. And lantana, there are a number of different species of lantana, and there is an exotic one that can become an invasive species, and it's not great when you have them on reserves like this, and you will find it sometimes on a reserve like this. And Georgianne, you say it is toxic to animals. I'm sure it is probably pretty toxic. I don't think it will cause death, but it will certainly be avoided by animals. Yes, good one. Thank you for that. There's also an indigenous lantana species called Lantana rugosa, which makes delicious little purple berries. They're like little, that you seldom find them, but when you do find them, it's like finding a very tiny handful of the most delicious sweets you can imagine. It will hopefully happen as the summer progresses. I'm staring around the place for mistletoe, quite astonishingly unable to find it. It's all over the place. Lots of questions about our unicorn and Zumi Jodi in New Mexico. Good one. Does it hurt when the impala's horn comes off? Zumi Jodi, I imagine it hurts like crazy. I think that it must be deeply painful. You know, there's a vascular system, there's a nervous system that goes up into the horn, it's bone. I think it must feel like, I don't know if you've ever broken a limb, perhaps as a child. You break a wrist or break a leg or something like that. That unspeakable pain, I'm pretty sure, is what the impala feels for a little while. But they can do nothing about it. I think they're a lot tougher than we are, and so they get over it pretty quickly. But I'm sure it's really sore. At the base, all broken off halfway. I'm sure it's horribly painful. I'm sure that there isn't, they probably do, it's probably not quite like breaking a leg, for example, because I'm sure that there is an element of dulling of the senses in there, because they clearly use those horns a lot for bashing each other. And so you don't want to have that combined with a whole lot of pain. But I'm sure it really does hurt. Losing any kind of appendage as an animal is a very painful thing. Right, so we're back into the area where those leopard tracks were earlier this morning. And so with any luck, we'll come up with something. I'm not sure where Scott and Steph are. I think they're actually still around here looking. But they haven't obviously had any luck just yet. But maybe we will be lucky. And as far as I know, Jamie is still hot on the tracks of the lions. Djuma, as I've said before, has been a relatively lion-free zone of late, which is, I think it's interesting. I think we may be in for some amazing sightings eventually. But those Birmingham boys seem to pass through and then disappear back south towards Mala Mala, where I think there are a lot more adult male lions, and so perhaps their territories are more of a threat. But I do think that the Salati males, if the Birminghams don't come in here and start making a noise, I think those Salati males from up north are definitely going to think about coming in and expanding their territory. I don't think the Matimbas will come back. They seem to be carving out a niche for themselves further south. Now, a very wonderful comment here from Sherry in Los Angeles, who's read a study that shows that elephants do not and cannot get cancer because they're genetically, their genetics just preclude them from getting cancer, whereas humans are not quite the same, unfortunately. Here is a vehicle driven by Scott Dyson and Stefan Winterboer. It is parked, it's parked with particularly poor skill, I feel, right on the road. They would definitely get a ticket in the city. Anyway, we've got around it, and I can see the tracks that they were following. Sherry, I think that is fascinating. I really do. I would be also interested to know how many other animals seem to have the genetics that preclude them from getting cancer. I think that the more we understand about cancer, the more that we will realize how it is, while absolutely some people will get it quite regardless of how they live. I think that the more we learn about it, the more we will realize how much of a lifestyle disease it actually is, how much things like sugar create. I think we have the triggers genetically in our bodies, but I think some people will just never express cancer because the cancer cells will never develop in their bodies because they don't have a lifestyle that will trigger them. And I mean, we know that stress causes a problem. We know that sugar causes an issue. We know that various kinds of foods for some people who are genetically predisposed to cancer will make it manifest. Now, I think the interesting thing with animals is that because their lifestyles haven't changed, their diets haven't changed out here, the chances of them ever actually expressing or manifesting a cancer, which might actually be in their bodies, but kept completely under control because they've evolved over millennia to deal with it will never express. Whereas us, as human beings, because our lifestyles have changed so profoundly, especially in the last, say, 300 years, our diets keep changing all the time. The air that we breathe keeps changing. The stresses and strains that we have that we engage with on a daily basis keep changing all the time. And what that means is that as a species, we are not actually adapted to living in the environments in which we do live, and what that will do is manifest in diseases that we used to be able to cope with. Diabetes being another one. Cancer, I'm sure. We're not evolved to dealing with the kind of lifestyles that we live from a biological point of view, and I think that you will find is a major cause of many of the sort of dread diseases that we get as human beings. Lovely question, thank you for that. South Street leopard still in here, and if Steph and Scott are not able to find it, well, who is? Maybe us. Maybe we'll find it. Maybe Tebbs will spot his first leopard. Tebbs, you've never seen a leopard live. Yeah. This would be Tebbs' first leopard, so it would be really
Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted and get you back in the vehicle with us. Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted and get you back in the vehicle with us. Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted and get you back in the vehicle with us. Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted and get you back in the vehicle with us.
What happened there, everybody? Something attacked our satellite. Maybe it froze because it is still pretty cold out here. Maybe the signal froze on its way up to the satellite. Anyway, we're back. We don't know what happened. No one knows what happened. We just switched everything off and switched everything back on again, and now we seem to be back with you. We're in the same area where we were looking for the leopard earlier. Scott and Stefan are still walking around in here. Jamie has given up on the lions. They've headed off east, at least west, into Elephant Plains towards the mountains, and so I'm afraid it's not going to be lions for us today. We're going to do one more loop around this area, and then I think we'll probably head off towards Buffelshoek Dam and see what we can find there. I'm just very interested to see that dam every day now, because every day it shrinks slightly more and slightly more, and I don't think that in 3 weeks it will have water in it anymore, but we should have our first major storm pretty much in the next 2 weeks, I hope. Really is a bizarrely cold day. Right, let us, instead of me waffling on about Jamie, let me hand you over to her, where she can tell you for herself where her little epic or her epic adventure tracking the lions took her, and I'll head towards Buffelshoek Dam and see you just now.
We're back again on the back of Wendy, and Wendy's tour of the dam cameras. We've gone from the Djuma Dam to the Arathusa Dam and back to the Djuma Dam again. Quick update on what I've been up to whilst I've been away. I was checking around for those Birmingham boys. It seems as though, from what I can understand, that they have crossed across, that's not good English, they have crossed into Elephant Plains and they're wandering around somewhere there. It is very difficult to hear. There were lion tracks absolutely everywhere. I did lose the tracks we were originally on, but it seems as though the guides have found them on Elephant Plains. Now, many of you, or at least some of the viewers, were watching the Djuma Dam camera and you thought you might have heard sounds of growling, possibly leopards mating. And the reason that I've rushed back here, look, it's very windy. It's difficult to hear a lot over the camera, but Taxon reported that he heard monkeys calling early this morning around Djuma Dam. And not only that, but there were male tracks coming into this direction about 2 days ago, and Karula's tracks, we think it's Karula's tracks, have been seen in this area as well. So I've rushed back now, and I want to do a little bit of sitting and listening. I don't think the leopards are on this side, because the monkeys are all over the place and they're very quiet, quite happy. Actually see a monkey. There we go, well done. There we go. So this little troop, well, there might have been the ones that were calling. We're sitting with possibly one of the best warning systems in the bush. I'm just double checking to see that I'm not missing anything. And virtual tours, you were wondering if we ever have any of the great, or if we have any of the great apes in Kruger, and the answer is no, we don't. The only primates we really get around Kruger are the vervet monkeys, the baboons, and then the bush babies, so the greater and the lesser bush baby, or galago. In terms of seeing baboons on drive, look, there are baboons around. I've yet to see them. They're very, very scarce in the northern Sabi Sands, and I'm not entirely sure as to why that might be. Possibly just the opportunities towards the bigger rivers to the south of us and to the north of us have attracted them across to the jackalberries and so on. I haven't seen any of the baboons on drive yet. I actually haven't seen any baboons while I've been here, which is very unusual. I was wearing a hat, it is now off my head. It is unbelievably windy. I was hoping it might stay nice and still today. Now you can be certain that these monkeys that we're looking at know where the leopards are. It's just a question of us finding them, if it is indeed the leopards. Difficult one. Definitely the chilliest I have been in a long time. It is still 18 degrees out here, which is 60 Fahrenheit. Very, very chilly morning. Unusually chilly. You can see I'm wrapped up in a nice thick jacket and it hasn't come off yet, and the wind chill is very impressive. I'm going to do another loop. I'm going to go around the back of the dam since these monkeys are quite relaxed and calm, and see if we can't find anything there. The nice thing about mating leopards, if they are here, is that they make a noise every few minutes, and on a cold day like today, they might be a bit more enthusiastically inclined than Kwatile and Tingana were. Oh, not Kwatile, sorry, Karula and Tingana were. Now, it's entirely possible that Karula has... Whoop, the hat's about to go. Entirely possible that Karula has headed off in this direction. She's left Tingana to possibly sow her wild oats, so to speak, something that female leopards do. They go out and look for mating opportunities with more than one male. And we've spoken about this a lot before, so regular viewers will be very familiar with the concept. But for new viewers, it's a way of ensuring or increasing the chance of the cub's survival rate, since a huge number of cubs are killed by unknown males. So if the male is the father or tricked into thinking that he is the father, he will leave the cubs alone if he encounters them. Then try to check the other side of the drainage line. Very tricky on a windy day like today. Dam, which is, as always, a hub of bird activity. They could also be something that might give away the leopards. But while we're here, Catherine, I will have a look and see for your favorite weaver bird. I'm not sure which particular species of weaver it is. I'm assuming something like the southern masked or the village weavers that often build around dam sites like this. But if you're anything like me, you might also be a fan of the red-headed weaver, which should be acquiring their blooming plumage, or their breeding plumage at the moment, which is that bright red head, obviously, as the name suggests. But I'll keep my eyes peeled. Let's see if we can find them. There's not much in the way of water around, except at the pumped water hole. So it could be that they are choosing different nesting sites. Let's go see which roller that is. I'm going to have a look whilst we listen for these leopards, or these possible leopards. Purple roller. Very difficult to get a nice angle without it flying away. There's a purple roller sheltering. You can see him blowing, feathers going askew. And yes, Anna Marie, I'm sure you can hear it very, very clearly as to how windy it is. It's unbelievable. You can hear go-away birds calling. There's the second purple roller. I didn't see that one. It's going to fly in. Hello. The same member, obviously, as the lilac-breasted roller family, or lilac-breasted roller, but a different species. Not quite as striking. A little bit more drab in color. Almost looks brown. Oh, fight. Is it? The purple roller got chased by the lilac-breasted roller, which is now furiously fluttering about. And see if it comes back. Lilac-breasted rollers are actually quite aggressive birds, and they tend to throw their weight around quite a lot. They often chase away other smaller species, and the purple roller and the lilac-breasted roller are roughly the same size, but they do compete for a very similar, if not pretty much a similar ecological niche. Here's our purple roller, it's still there. And the whole time I'm just trying to listen whenever the wind drops. Not sure if you can hear that over the howling wind that Anna Marie commented on, but it's chirping indignantly. fluttering in the wind. I've spoken about the lack of baboons, and whilst I go and investigate this drainage line, Astralina, thank you for letting me know that there used to be quite a nice big troop that were seen around Djuma. I guess they've moved off to greener pastures. It's interesting that we don't see them anymore, but they'll come and go as the seasons move through. I'm sure they'll be back again. It's interesting to compare. I know that James was talking about this a little bit earlier as to how dry Djuma's looking. And it's actually quite a contrast to Arathusa. Arathusa's got much thicker clay soils, and I'm just thinking in terms of baboon distribution, what might bring them to an area in terms of water and food. And there's not much in the way of fruit at the moment, but maybe with the marula fruits coming, we might see more baboons. Something clunked, not a happy sound. And it is looking dry, but of course that water hole just off to the left of the camera is pumped by the landowners. So for the answer to our Siberia Zoomy, you were wondering if the landowners can pump from a local water source, and the answer is yes, that's what they do. There's a borehole that will be dug deep down into the earth, and it will be pulling up water from underground to feed those water holes. And you've got to be careful how you do it. It's important to get a balance between natural water holes and dams, because otherwise what you get, especially in dry seasons like this, it's great that you can provide water, but you have to be aware that that comes with a consequence, and the consequence is that the land around it is going to be hit very hard by the herbivore species, because obviously they congregate close to water. There's a lot of traffic coming through which depletes the grass layer, and then there's a great deal of grazing around in that area as well. So what can happen if you're not too careful about it is you get areas around the dam that become a little bit more eroded because the grass cover's gone. But that, of course, happens in natural environments as well, particularly around dams that maintain their water better than others do. You'll often find those nice open areas around dams. Now, I'm trapping up this drainage line just because I think the monkeys would still be shouting on that side. But I don't think, if we go too much further, I don't think you would have been able to hear leopards growling from that far away, if that is indeed what was heard on the Djuma Dam camera. I just wanted to do a little bit of investigation along here. That Jerry is enjoying our live safaris and the education that it provides, but Jerry wants to know what happens when it rains, and is there protection for us and the cameraman? And the answer is, at the moment, Jerry, is that we tend to, it depends on how heavy the rain is. Obviously we've got some very serious electronic equipment traveling along in the back with us, and we have to be careful of getting that wet in any way, because even the smallest amount can do some serious damage. So what we often do is we put if we're caught out, very much caught out in the middle of nowhere with the rain, then we put a big plastic sheet over us, and then we just have to sit and wait it out. If we see it coming and we're a little bit closer to camp, then we can rush back and go under the roof for a while in the garage, and we can sit there and do a little bit of a question and an answer and a show and tell session. Do you think you can get the cuckoo that's on the ground in front of me? There we go. Just because we don't often get to see them feeding as this one is. And he gives us something to look at so that I can stop and just listen for those leopards. Definitely. Beautiful bird. An African hoopoe. Called a hoopoe because of the sound it makes, which essentially goes whoop, 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 whoop. And my dad, as an interesting aside, this is my dad's favorite bird. We always used to see them in our garden in Johannesburg. Striking, beautiful bird. It'd be amazing to look at these sensory organs all clustered around the tip of that beak. To see a little hoopoe in its natural habitat, and I have to duck around here and try and not catch Liam on a buffalo thorn. Oh, I think we did it. I think we've escaped. Now we're chatting about the African hoopoe, and earlier we were speaking about another bird species also with a nice long bill, and that was the woodlands kingfisher. And Siberia Zumi, you suggested that maybe the absence or the lateness of the woodlands kingfisher is due to the lack of rain. Entirely possible. It might have delayed them. These birds know all kinds of things that we don't, and they're very easily able to judge when the best time to come and return. And they do come and breed here. So it's important that they have plenty of access to the various insects that come out when there are big rains. Despite their name kingfishers, they're insect eaters. Now, I know that, Natasha, you're looking forward to their return, so am I. We'll be keeping an eye out for them. They're not terribly late just yet. It's about the right time for them to start arriving. We should be seeing them soon. Place I want to go and check. Yesterday James said while he was out and about tracking that he thought he saw leopard tracks going across Gowrie cut line and into the drainage line there. You know, the regular viewers will know it. It's that huge jackalberry that sits at the edge of the drainage line there. I want to go and have a look there, see if maybe the leopards have started moving in that direction. Again, if that is what it was that we heard over the camera. It must be very difficult to tell with the wind whipping around like it has been. But I don't see any tracks around and about in that drainage line. And I think for us to go any further along there, it'd probably be a bit far for you to have heard anything. Blood supply to the top of my scalp, I actually can't tighten my cap any further, and yet still the wind has the strength enough if I lift my head up to push it off my head, and I might have to just abandon it for the moment. Check deep down in here. I did drive this route first thing this morning. So if we find any leopard tracks, then it will be after I was here at about 5 o'clock or 5:15. I'm going to head across to Gowrie Cutline, and whilst I do that, I believe James has some pretty flowers to show you. So go and have a look at James's pretty flowers, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Right, so no leopards just yet, no lions just yet, but flowers. One must always be aware when one gets out of the car and sees some flowers that there isn't a lion or perhaps a leopard lurking behind where you're standing. And I heard a noise in the bush, but it was a francolin. So these flowers are part of a very large group of flowers called the morning glories, and they're quite common at this time of the year, and all of them are this color or varying degrees, and they have no scent at all. And you find that quite a lot with the purple flowers out here, and I'd be interested to know if it's the same in the rest of the world. Purple flowers out here, or any flowers that have blue on them, are often attract vectors, a vector being an animal, or doesn't have to be an animal, can be the wind, but in this case probably an insect that will come and pick up pollen and take it off, or seeds even, and the flower gives off ultraviolet, or reflects ultraviolet radiation, and insects are really good at seeing that, and because of that attraction through ultraviolet radiation, there's no need for them to have a smell that might attract, say, moths or even birds. And that's why a lot of these purple flowers, or flowers that have blue in them, don't tend to have a smell out here. Now, I'd be fascinated to know if that is the case, say in the Americas or in Europe, if flowers that are pink or purple and blue have any scent there. Certainly out here it doesn't seem to be the case. But the white flowers here, sometimes the yellow flowers, but the white flowers here always have a delicious smell. So that is the morning glory. And we're now on the far northeastern corner of Djuma. We've driven the whole Buffelshoek cut line looking for various bits and pieces, and we haven't come up with any tracks coming hither or yon. And so we're going to go and have a look at Buffelshoek Dam and see if there isn't anything there, and what the state of the dam is. There's been a very badly injured hippopotamus in that dam for the last little while, and he's come out of the water the last 2 times that we've been there and wandered off. How he got injured, I'm sure, was probably over a territorial dispute through the lack of water. So, a question from Tucson, Arizona, rather, about our new cameraman Tebs, and you want to know how you spell his name. I'm going to get him to spell it for you. Tebs, go for it.
T-E-B-S.
T-E-B-S, and the full, what's your full name?
Tebiso.
So his full name is Tebiso, and that would be spelled?
T-S-H-E-P-I-S-O.
Say it again.
T-S-H-E-P-I-S-O.
T-S-H-E-P-I-S-O. Tebiso. There we go. Rather, I hope that helps. Related to whom? Interesting question from Movie Cat about whether Tebs is related to, I couldn't get the name. It'll come through again, don't worry. Not getting it, I'm afraid. Oh, I see. Oh, Right, you're wondering if it's Romeo Jason Stroud. No, Tebs is definitely not related to one of our other cameramen, Jason Stroud or Romeo. No. You can see a howling gale blowing up, and this wind has been, it feels like we're at the sea. This wind has been blowing now for 3 days, and it is completely bizarre for this time of the year and for this area. To have 3 days of wind, cold wind coming through is completely strange. No, I don't know what's going on. Strange things afoot that will have the conspiracy theorists saying all sorts of different things. Ew. Time to get into a drainage line and away from this wind. We know, of course, that we get morning glories all the way around the world, and I'm not sure how closely related they are to each other. And Pretty Nightmare in Texas, thank you. You say that your morning glories open up in the morning and they die off towards the night. I think these ones, although they are definitely annuals, which means that they don't survive all year, certainly those flowers last more than a day. They'll last probably quite a few weeks actually in the ground there. Not each individual bloom, but each plant, which will produce lots of different blooms, and they will last more than a day. And that is interesting. So Teresa, you in the US, you say that it's illegal to grow morning glory there because it strangles other vegetation. Now, is that perhaps because it's an invasive species? Is it not from there? Like I say, I think there are probably lots and lots of different species of morning glory plant around the place, but I'm sure that it's been brought into various areas. Probably does cause a strangling effect on local vegetation, depending on which one it is. The other thing that's starting to come out of the ground now are the lilies, and they are just delicious smelling. There are lots of leaves around, not so many flowers yet. We have seen some lily flowers, but lots of leaves popping up from the bulbs. I shall try and show you one if I see it. I think X-Ranga in Tasmania has come up with a brilliant suggestion. She says that Ted is actually looking a bit nervous now. She says that he needs to be inducted into the game drives by having something nice to eat. Well, something to eat. X-Ranga, I think that's a brilliant idea, and we will find Tebs something to eat. If I can't find a fruit, we'll definitely have a bit of a leaf sampling session by the time we get to Buffelshoek Dam. That's a brilliant idea. What I want to try and find him is some Bushman's grape. And there are lots of leaves around, but I'm trying to find a fruit. They're lovely they're actually quite pleasant to eat. Tiny little raisin-like fruit that occurs on these bushes here. That is Cissus cornifolia, or the Bushman's grape. I don't see any there. They fruit for a very, very short period. Here we go. Now, it's your lucky day, Tibbs. Okay, now, remember that plant I was describing earlier? I'm just going to break the top off this one. I described that local lantana that we get here. This is Lantana rugosa, and it produces a really delicious little collection of jewel-like sweet fruits eventually when it does fruit, and it's growing in the middle of this Bushman's grape bush. Now, Tibbs, I'll give you a leaf as well. This is not a delicious smelling leaf, Tibbs. There you go, you can smell that. Okay, now what I want you to do, I will do the same, don't worry, is just put your teeth into the pink part of that. Don't eat the whole thing because it's not actually ripe. It's not very delicious yet. And tell me what you taste. It's not very nice now, is it?
Yeah.
They're actually so bitter when they're like this. They're pretty unpleasant. But when they turn that pink, purple colour, what they taste like, it's difficult to describe. But what Brian and I decided the other day was they taste like roast chicken, like a roast chicken lunch, but combined with the apple crumble pudding afterwards. So it's actually quite a nice taste. So that's Tibbs's first piece of Bushman's grape. There will be many other things that we have to eat, Tibbs, but that's the first one for you. I'll try and find something more pleasant for the next time around. Apparently Brent ate a few of those a few drives ago. Brent, of course, has a constitution made of cast iron, and I think that Brent is probably able to eat anything and survive. Thank you for your update, Teresa. Apparently the illegal morning glory is in Surrey, Canada. I didn't know there was a Surrey in Canada. There's plenty and plenty of plants that have come around the world, been transferred by people mainly, that have started to grow in other areas and to really do take over. Lantana is one of them that we get out here, the exotic Lantana species. And there's another one called the triffid weed, or Chromalina odorata, that has taken over swathes of Swaziland and northern KwaZulu-Natal. And sorry, we're going to have to move the camera slightly. We're going to... Sorry about this, everybody. As you well know, we are obviously not in a position to be able to show you those strange animals with the horns on their noses, and our path is blocked currently. We are unable to go around it, and so I have to turn around and also have to tell you about it, of course. Right, well, Tibbs, that's a rude awakening to that particular aspect of what we do out here. Yeah. No, we'll just pretend nothing's happened, and that a 180-degree turn on the road is an entirely normal thing to do while on the way to Bulvershoek Dam. We will now approach Bulvershoek Dam from another angle. Marvellous that we seem to have generated a bit of conversation through our morning glory. Nancy, Astralina and Elise, you're discussing where to get the best seeds, and I don't know that we grow it a huge amount in our gardens here. Certainly my mother, who is an extremely green-fingered person, I don't think she's ever grown morning glory here, and I've only ever seen it as a wild plant out here in South Africa. I'm sure you can get variations of it to plant in your gardens here, but there are lots of different wild species that we get out here that I don't think perhaps survive too well in the gardens of Johannesburg, where I come from. But I'm sure lots of various hybrid species that you can find all around the US and possibly Europe that you can grow in your gardens. But alas, for you lot, I'm afraid you're going into the winter now, and so I'm not sure that your morning glories will grow now. Although if your winter's going anything like our summer, you're probably quite hot. Carol says, there are lots of different plants that are illegal to grow in various parts of the world, and Carol, you say in the US it's illegal to grow certain kinds of poppies. Now, is that because they're invasive, or because they're worried that you're going to start making more opiates from them, opium? I'm sure opium poppies are definitely illegal. There is a waterbuck running off through the bushes there. Young bull. There he goes. So, the animal with, I think, the most magnificent horns out here, or certainly the second most magnificent set of horns, is indeed the waterbuck, and that's what we're looking at there before we continue on our way to Buffelshoek Dam. And Barbara, you want to know if there are any antlered animals in this part of Africa. Barbara, there are no antlered animals anywhere in Africa unless they've been imported. And we do have a number of fallow deer populations in South Africa, the odd reindeer population too, but they're antlered, of course, but it's only the deer, as far as I'm aware, that have antlers. And there are some antlered animals, I think in the Middle East, maybe, definitely in Europe, but nothing south of the Sahara, nothing that has ever developed antlers. So no antlers out here, just lots of horns. And of course the difference is that an antler, I think, will grow back again if it comes off, and often they do come off. So they regrow, if I'm not mistaken, on something like a fallow deer. They regrow every year. Now, there's been lots of very concerned and very kind following of the leopard orchid that I planted at Djuma Waterhole. Some excellent advice from one of our viewers who told me that they need a fungus to grow, so that I must be patient. They will take some time. And Charlie in Cleveland, it's not growing yet, my little leopard orchid, but the rest of the leopard orchids will start to bloom fairly soon, I think. So we'll keep an eye out for them. And for those of you who perhaps don't know, leopard orchids are a sort of species of epiphytic plant. So they grow into the top of trees. They don't cause any harm to the host plant that they grow on. And they make lovely little yellow and brown spotted flowers, hence leopard orchid, normally around Christmas time. They have a number of traditional uses, one of which is that should you find yourself alone and single in the world and wish for that situation to not be as it is, you pick the canes on which the leaves grow, you chew those at midnight on the full moon and say the name of the one you want, and she will immediately start thinking of you. I have tried this many times, and as you can see, I have yet to marry Scarlett Johansson. I thought I spotted something in there, but I did not. Thank you very much to Miles in Tucson, Arizona, who has made mention of the fact that some of the sweet peas and irises of the western United States do in fact have a very nice smell. But you agree with me that the white ones tend to have the sweetest and most beautiful smell. That's right, of course, sweet peas definitely out here as well. The purpley blue ones do have a scent. course, and lavender flowers, of course. But I think the lavender flowers mainly come from the leaves. I think it's the aromatic part of the leaves that makes lavender smell. Not so much the flowers. So we're now approaching Biffleshoek Dam from a different direction completely, and hopefully our friend who was incognito will have moved on. And just a quick, without being facetious, before we're going to head across to Jamie now, but just a quick recap for those of you who perhaps don't know, we don't show rhino on this show. We don't want to make any contribution, obviously, to the scourge of rhino poaching, and anything that might benefit poachers we want to completely exclude. So that's why we don't show rhino. We're going to head across to Jamie. I will head to the dam and see you just now.
Exactly it was that the viewers heard on the shout over the wind. This is ridiculous. I'm not sure exactly what the sound was that you heard, but it is possible because VM and I just picked up on some leopard tracks going across the road and into the block to the north. So the block between Gowrie Main or Gowrie Cutline and Mvubu Road. So if you were watching the Djuma Dam camera and you saw VM and myself bobbing and weaving between the bushes at the back, that was us looking for these leopards, but I could only see one track, so it might be a coincidence, and it is a track there's just the one that had been driven over the rest of them. I am now making my way towards that wonderful jackalberry tree that the leopards love so much, or I like to think they do. And just while I remember it, I'm sure you're all excited for Tara's final drive this afternoon. Don't forget to tune in for that on the Sunset Safari. I'm very excited to meet her. I've heard plenty about her, so I'll be looking forward to that this afternoon. Come on, leopards, where are you hiding? Show yourself for the last few moments. Nope. One day. In this tree there will be a leopard. It's such a perfect tree. It just looks like it was built and designed for a leopard to be lying stretched across the branches. And I'm sure one day when I come and check I will find one here. Let's carry on. I believe that James was discussing the whole thing that Brent brought up with us a couple of days ago about elephants and their genetics and getting cancer, and the fact that they generally can't because they have genes that immediately program their body to jump on top of rapidly multiplying cells, something that they can afford to do because of their enormous size, and something that we have to be very careful of. We don't have quite the same bulk and volume to our bodies. So we've only got one parcel of that gene, and they've got 3 different types. But although the story is that they don't get cancer, Melissa's raised an interesting point, because apparently a couple of years ago in a zoo, have you got tracks there, Liam?
Lion.
Lion? Please don't tell me that. Let's go see there. It could be. It could easily be. Sorry, Melissa. I'll be with you in one moment. No. I'll go back in a moment and investigate. Let me just finish up answering Melissa's question. Why are there lion tracks there? I don't understand. Hyena tracks, lots. And Melissa, you were wondering, because there was this example of the elephant in the zoo that was euthanized because it had severe either uterine or cervical cancer. You were wondering if there was a link between captivity and that fact. And I think there's a possibility, just like there's a link between elephants getting arthritis and the fact that they're in captivity. It's much more common in captivity. But I also think there's the factor that although they do have those genes, there's always going to be that one example, that one aberration. So to say that they never ever get cancer is probably too blanket a statement. You could say that they have a much higher resistance than something like a human does. There must be exceptions where that gene just doesn't quite kick in, doesn't catch the cancerous cells. That being said, there's all kinds of factors we could consider: exposure to radiation, the fact that they're living in polluted cities in zoo environments. That could all play a role as well in terms of increasing the chance that they have of getting something like that. But obviously a very sad situation. Is something that I spoke about, I think, a couple of nights ago. Speaking of elephants, they've been doing some landscaping and gardening. They decided that that tree looked much better in the road than it did off the road. I've said before that elephants are very, very complex creatures. And Mo, you were wondering if I've ever witnessed an elephant mourn. And I know that many of you would have seen those documentaries on them investigating the bones or old carcasses of other elephants that have died. And Mo, I've never personally witnessed it, but I definitely believe that it is a distinct possibility that they do mourn. Certainly, lots of hyena. The bond, the maternal bond between mother and offspring is incredibly strong, even before that offspring is born. So if it's a stillborn, the mother still shows a tremendous sadness, and she'll investigate the fetus with her trunk and stroke it and move it around. Not something I've ever personally witnessed, but I've definitely read about and seen it in various documentaries. And because elephants are such complex emotional creatures, it doesn't surprise me at all that they would mourn. I don't want to put too anthropomorphic a spin on it, though. I think that they recover far faster than, or maybe they don't, maybe they just have to recover faster than humans do. They have to move on because it's part of survival. But I definitely think that's a distinct possibility that they do mourn. I think they do, actually. It's not even a possibility. I think that they do. I think it would be devastating to witness as well, just because elephants have a way of conveying a depth of emotion that perhaps you don't see in the other animals as much. I think it would be incredibly sad. What I want to do, we're going to be very, very quiet. And we're going to try and sneak around this corner, and I'm going to try and catch this nesting harrier hawk unawares. I've been trying to do it for weeks to show you all, but it sees me coming every time and flies away just before. So everybody sit quietly. Actually, it might be around the next corner. Let me just poke my head around. No, it's around the next corner. Okay, you can talk as much as you want. Talk amongst yourselves as you were. I think it's around the next corner. Somewhere on Vulture's Nest, there is a nesting harrier hawk that is very, very camera shy. And I want to see if we can sneak up on it today. I'm still keeping an eye out for the leopards, by the way. I'm just doing a big loop around the dam in case they did move. I was just going to sneak around the corner here, but I don't think, from what I can see, that our bird is on the nest. Oh, there's an elephant though. Surprise! Sorry, V, I'm just trying to shuffle you into an open gap there. There's an elephant, a little elephant bottom. Hello, Elise. There's the cow at the back. Can only see these two at the moment, but she seems to be slowly coming in our direction. I'm going to shuffle forward a bit so we can get her. Oh no, she's going to turn her head away. I think let's try and get around the corner, see if we can get a clearer view of the rest of the herd. And whilst I do that, let's head across to James, who's sitting at Buffelshoek Dam. I'll see if I can get us a nice view of the Ellies to finish off our morning.
So we've come to Buffelshoek Dam. There was no other incident on our way here, and I'm just going to ask Tibbs to pan down over the dam to give you an idea. Like I say, this dam has not dried up in 17 years, and you can see the mud. You can see that the water is disappearing at an incredible rate. I think it's substantially drier than it was even yesterday. And if we don't get rain, I think in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think that this will dry up. And we'll have a similar situation as we did at the Djuma Waterhole and at Treehouse Dam and at Twin Dams, where we have eventually just a mud wallow with a couple of catfish flopping around in it. And then it will dry up into a hard clay crust until the next proper rains come, whenever they may be. Also a couple of woolly necked storks, the other side of the water there. And there were a whole lot of them when we arrived. Some of them seem to have absconded into the bush exactly in the direction where that one's going. I'm not sure what they're doing around there. They've probably found some sort of food source. They will eat just about anything in the way of flesh. So they will even eat, if there's been a termite emergence, I'm sure they'd very happily sit there and pick off the termites for a while. And the storks will come to a waterhole like this to pick up the last remaining fish. And once they have managed to eat all the sort of right-sized fish, then it will be left to things like the marabou storks and the fish eagles to come and polish off the last of the very big catfish. They will be the last remaining fish in this area. It will be a very useful spot, this, for buffalo, certainly for rhino and for elephant. They will love the mud as the heat starts to build during the summertime. But as I say, today has been a surprisingly chilly day, and I don't think that there's going to be a huge amount coming down to have a swim here now. I must say there is a feeling of kind of a, I don't know what it is. It's very peaceful out here now. There's a strange kind of feeling of ethereal. I really don't know how to describe it. It's like a mystery almost around this windy waterhole at the moment. A bit of nostalgia maybe and sentimentality. You might think I'm totally insane. You'll probably be correct. Right, it's time for us to sign off. Thank you very much to Tibbs on his debut. Well done, good job, and look forward to working with you further. A big thanks to Jerry also on her excellent job that she's doing in the final control. Reminder that Tara Peary will be taking a drive today, so her old friends, please send through your comments and questions and welcomes to her, and I will see you either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. See you then. Stay safe wherever you are. Bye-bye.
The moment, getting a nice view of these ellies is actually proving to be pretty tricky. They're tucked away in some quite seriously thick bush, and the winds unsettled them, so they're not happy with us when we try and get closer. And we'll leave them there for now and see if they decide to come any closer to us. I've just seen an enormous bull, probably the biggest tusk set that I've seen since I started working here, but he is unbelievably shy. He ran away almost straight away as we came down the road. I'm not obviously going to try and spook him any further by trying to get a nice visual of him, but just take my word for it when I say it's probably the biggest set of tusks I've seen while I've been working here. Not sure why he is so shy though. I'll try and see if I can loop. I might have a nice easy path to loop around the other way. Let's try that, just so we can get a nice farewell view of these elephants before we finish up for the morning. But we'll have a good place to start for this afternoon. Actually, if I try and get us there, I'm trying to get a nice view of this elephant bull. Very young elephant bull. He's tiny, but look at how long his tusks are. It's really quite impressive for a young male that size. He's probably only about, I would say, 8 or 9, and he's growing a serious set of tusks. An impressive little boy. He's also quite nervous though, so I'm not going to go too much further. Pluck away a piece of buffalo thorn, something that would give you or I endless hassles in terms of hooking into our skin. There we go, perfect example, thank you, Viam. Those hooked thorns, and yet something that an elephant can devour endlessly without any problems. I don't know how it is possible that the skin on the inside of their mouth is so reinforced with melanin that it makes it so tough. It still boggles my mind. And as the wind continues to howl, it does seem to be heating up considerably. Once again, do not forget that we have a special guest returning to do one of our live safaris, Tara Puri's last drive with WildEarth, and I'm sure you're all very, very excited. So don't forget to join us for this afternoon's sunset safari. I'm sure she'll have wonderful stories to share with all of you since her time away from WildEarth. Anyway, a big thank you from myself, and a big thank you to Viam for all of his fantastic camera work this morning and assistance in spotting all kinds of things out and about. And a big thank you to all of you, the viewers, and to Jerry sitting in the director's chair. A fantastic job done this morning, as well as Tara in FC. Well, have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we will catch you for the sunset safari. Don't forget to join us. Tara will be there. Have a great time. Bye-bye, everybody.